In August of 1971, in the basement of a university building in California, a scientist built a prison. Not a real one, a pretend one. 3 small cells, a hallway, a closet. He filled it with volunteers, ordinary college students, paid $15 a day, randomly split into prisoners and guards. The experiment was scheduled to run for 2 weeks. It lasted 6 days. Not because the students broke. Well, they did. But that's not the reason it ended. It ended because of what was happening to the scientist. And 50 years later, this story would break again, in a way almost nobody saw coming. Okay, you might think you know this one, the Stanford Prison Experiment. It's in every psychology textbook, every documentary about how evil lives inside ordinary people. But the version you know is the surface. Underneath it are 2 stranger stories. What the experiment did to the man running it, and what happened when, decades later, people finally listened to the tapes. Let's start at the beginning. The man was Philip Zimbardo, a psychology professor at Stanford. His question sounds simple. Are cruel places cruel because of the people in them? Or do places make people cruel? He put an ad in the paper for a study of prison life. 70-plus applicants were screened down to about 24 of the most stable, healthy young men they could find. A coin flip decided everything. Heads, you're a guard. Tails, you're a prisoner. That coin flip is the whole point. These were interchangeable, ordinary people. Then Zimbardo did something clever and slightly terrifying. He made it real. Real police cars pulled up to the prisoners' actual homes. Real officers arrested them in front of neighbors. Handcuffs, sirens, the works. They were blindfolded, brought to the basement, stripped, deloused, given smocks with ID numbers, and a chain around one ankle. From that moment, they had no names. Prisoner 8612, Prisoner 416. The guards got khaki uniforms, wooden batons, and mirrored sunglasses, so no one could see their eyes. Zimbardo didn't just run the study. He gave himself a role inside it. He became the prison superintendent. Remember that. It matters. For one day, it was awkward theater, students smirking through role play. Then it wasn't. On day 2, the prisoners rebelled, barricaded their cells with their beds. The guards broke the rebellion with a fire extinguisher, blasting skin-chilling CO2 through the bars. They stripped prisoners, took their beds, and started using sleep as a weapon. Counts at 2 a.m., push-ups at 4. And roughly 36 hours in, prisoner 8612. A young man named Douglas Corpy broke, screaming, crying, raging in the corridor. He was burning up inside. He was locked for a time in the hole, a dark utility closet barely big enough to stand in. Eventually, they let him go home. An experiment full of healthy, stable young men had produced its first breakdown in a day and a half. Now, the textbook version says, see how fast good people turn cruel? And sure, but watch the other transformation. The one happening to the man in the superintendent's office. Because Zimbardo wasn't observing his prison. He was running it. When rumors spread that Corpy might return with friends to break prisoners out, Zimbardo didn't note it on a clipboard like a scientist. He reacted like a warden. He tried to move his entire prison to another location to foil the raid. The raid never came. A colleague, psychologist Gordon Bauer, dropped by and asked him one quiet, devastating question. What's the independent variable in this study? What are you actually measuring? Zimbardo later admitted the question made him angry, not curious. The scientist part of his brain was going dark, and the superintendent part didn't like being challenged. Meanwhile, his guards escalated. Humiliation drills, buckets instead of bathrooms, prisoners made to clean toilets with bare hands. One guard adopted a full swaggering persona, patterned after a sadistic movie prison warden. The other prisoners called the worst shift the John Wayne shift. By day 5, more prisoners had broken down. And that evening, a young psychologist named Christina Maslach came to visit. She was Zimbardo's girlfriend. She stood in that corridor and watched guards march prisoners to the toilet with paper bags over their heads, chained together. Everyone else who'd seen the prison, dozens of people, had watched with fascination. Maslach was the first to say the obvious out loud. It's terrible what you're doing to those boys. And then she said the thing that actually ended the experiment. Not about the prisoners. about him that the man standing in that basement, absorbed, defensive, proud of his little kingdom, had been changed into someone she didn't recognize and didn't like. The prison didn't just capture the students, it had captured the scientist. That was the moment he saw it. Zimbardo shut the whole thing down the next day. 6 days, not 14. The conclusion went around the world and never stopped moving. Ordinary people plus the right situation equals cruelty. The barrel corrupts the apples. It got cited to explain prison abuse, atrocities, corporate scandal. It made Zimbardo one of the most famous psychologists alive. And for almost 50 years, that's where the story ended. Then people started going through the archive. In the 2000s, a French researcher named Thibault Letexier pulled the original recordings and documents from Stanford's own files. And on tape, from the very first orientation, before a single prisoner arrived, the guards weren't blank slates waiting for a situation to shape them. They were being coached, told the study needed tough guards, guided toward the hostility that would later be presented as spontaneous human nature. Then, in 2017, Douglas Corpy, prisoner 8612, the famous first breakdown, the scream that's in every documentary, said his breakdown was an act. He wanted out to study for a graduate exam, and hysteria was the only exit. Now, honesty requires both sides here. Zimbardo pushed back hard, and noted Corpy's account had shifted several times over the decades. The man himself is an unreliable narrator of his own scream, but the tape of the guards being coached, that's not memory. That's tape. And one more crack, maybe the deepest. Researchers later reran that original newspaper ad, with and without the words prison life. The version mentioning prison attracted measurably more aggressive, more authoritarian volunteers. The barrel may not have corrupted random apples. The barrel may have advertised for them. So was it all fake? No. And that answer matters. Real students really did suffer in that basement. The ethics scandal was real enough that it helped force universities to overhaul the rules for experimenting on human beings. The review boards that exist today exist partly because of that basement. And the man at the center defended the study's core truth for the rest of his life. Right up to his death in October 2024, at 91. But as proof that situations turn anyone cruel, the experiment can't carry that weight anymore. A demonstration staged by a man who forgot he was a scientist, performed by young men who knew they had an audience. Which leaves us with the strangest ending of any experiment I know. It set out to prove that a role can swallow a person, that you can hand someone a little power, a costume, an audience, and watch them disappear into it. It failed to prove that about the guards. It proved it, perfectly, about the scientist. The prisoners went home in 1971. The superintendent, in a way, never fully did. And the most honest finding from that basement was never written up in any journal. The easiest person for an experiment to break is the one who's certain he's just observing it.